Welcome back. You're watching HFO-TV.
My name is Christian Kaylor, and I'm an economist with the state of Oregon in the Employment Department. And I'm going to be going over some of the major economic trends that we're seeing in the Portland economy right now. So first up, if you have to look at anything to understand what's going on in the Portland economy, you have to understand this, that employment growth has been quite strong. At the bottom of the recession in 2010, we had less than 1 million jobs in the Portland metro region. Over the last 5 years, we've gained 125,000 jobs. This is very robust growth. And we'll go into detail and exactly what industries and occupations those are in. But relatively, this is quite strong coming out of the bottom of a deep recession. And right now, for the last 2 years, we've been adding jobs at a pace of about 35,000 jobs per year over the last couple of years. That's one of the stronger paces that we've seen historically in Portland for job growth. And right now, summer of 2015, we're seeing that continue. That ranks Portland pretty highly at about 3% job growth in the United States. I made this nice chart of the 50 largest metropolitan areas in the United States. The Portland metro area is about the 25th largest by population with 2.3 million people in it. For perspective, 2.3 million is equal to the population of Idaho and Alaska combined, or the entire state of New Mexico. So we're looking at the entire Portland region, both in southwest Washington and the Oregon side of the border with Washington, Multnomah, and Clackamas County, southwest Washington with Clark County, and the rural counties of Yamhill, Columbia, and Skamania counties. To combine, you get that 2.3 million people. We're one of the largest metro areas in the United States, and we rank above average at about 3% job growth over the last 12 months. That compares with about 2.1% job growth for the United States overall. So we are growing noticeably faster, though we see particularly California in the high-tech area, San Jose, and a lot of places in Florida, such as Miami, Orlando, very fast job growth over the last 12 months. Within the Portland area, though, we're seeing some strong diversity in job growth. So this is the fastest growing county for job growth over the last 5 years, Washington County. This is the Silicon Forest, the Beaverton-Hillsboro area. That 17% job growth over the last 5 years is quite strong. It's the fastest of any of the 36 counties in Oregon. It's about twice as fast as the rest of Oregon at about 8% job growth. But then we have Clackamas County, another suburban Portland county to the southeast. And it's growing relatively slowly, though in line with the rest of Oregon at about 8% job growth over the last 5 years. But that's incredibly disparate. Here we have Washington County growing roughly twice as fast as Clackamas County. So there is a lot of unevenness in that job growth around the region. And here we have Multnomah County, the second fastest job growth in the state. That's primarily the city of Portland and Gresham, Tigard, Troutdale. But the vast majority of that employment, probably 85–90% of the jobs in Multnomah County are in the city of Portland. And it's doing very well, 13% job growth. What's unusual about this particular economic recovery is if we look at the 3 largest counties in Oregon, Multnomah County in black, Washington County in red, and Clackamas County in green, for the last 5 years now, Multnomah County has created more jobs every year than Washington County and Clackamas County combined. And historically, we've never seen this before. If you look at the previous recession, economic recovery coming out of recession, 2005, 2006, you see Washington County creating more jobs every year, 10, 12, 13,000 jobs, compared to Multnomah County creating about 7,000 or 8,000 jobs every year in the last economic recovery. Now we see Multnomah County consistently creating more jobs than Washington County and Clackamas County. Focusing on, say, Clackamas County in green here, you'll see in the last economic recovery it was creating about 5,000 jobs a year. The last few years it's created about 2,000 to 3,000 jobs. Over the last 12 months, 2,000 jobs were created in Clackamas County. So a relatively weak pace for employment growth, particularly in Clackamas County. Washington County in red, the numbers are good. That pace is only really possible because Washington County is still quite a bit smaller than the largest county in Oregon, Multnomah County. Looking at where these jobs are being created, we start to see some interesting trends. Overall, it's a diverse economic recovery. Almost 3% job growth. We see manufacturing doing very well, trade, transportation, utilities, professional and business services, healthcare, leisure, government. Almost all of these industries are growing at a fairly decent pace. But two things stand out here. One, the fastest growing industry right now is something called professional and business services. I'll talk a little bit more about what that is later in the presentation. But as a preview, those are professional services that tend to be in downtown urban environments and office buildings. And the city of Portland has a lot of that. So that's really helping the city of Portland relative to the suburbs. And here you'll notice construction. Construction has actually shrunk over the last 12 months. That we'll talk about why that is in a few more slides. But that is unusual, and that's holding back the overall economic recovery in the area. Looking at, say, the 10-year trend, you see more of the long-term trend. I wanted to take out the recessions, the economic surges, and try and get a sense for what in the Portland area has been going on structurally over a longer period of time. And here the pattern sort of leaps out. So whereas the number of jobs in Portland area today is 11% more than 10 years ago, construction and manufacturing haven't grown at all over the last 10 years. So from 2005 to 2015, they went on a roller coaster. They had very good years and they had some very bad years. The net effect is essentially no job growth in these two major industries. Professional and business services and healthcare did very well. 25% growth in professional and business services, 33% in healthcare. These two major industries combined, professional and business services and healthcare, that's 2 out of 3 new jobs created in the last 10 years in the Portland area. These industries are doing very well. These industries are not, and that's holding back the overall economy, that weakness in these two industries in particular, construction and manufacturing. So when I mentioned that the Portland metro area is growing strongly, historically and compared to most of the US, a lot of people wonder if all these jobs aren't just low wage. All these jobs are coffee shops, all these jobs are in tattoo parlors. These are minimum wage jobs. And in fact, there's a very interesting pattern happening here with the job creation. So I took the major industries in the Portland area and I ranked them from higher wage down to lower wage. High-tech manufacturing at the top, $130,000 a year for the average worker in high-tech manufacturing. The lowest one, $20,000 a year for folks working in leisure and hospitality. And I just sort of ranked them out. And right in the middle, at about $55,000 a year, we have the heart of the middle class. We have construction, government, and non-high-tech manufacturing. 3 industries that all pay about $55,000 to $60,000 a year. We are, in fact, growing a lot of low-wage jobs. I put them here in blue. Employment services, those are temp agencies, essentially. Retail, nursing care, leisure and hospitality. Major industries that pay less than $30,000 a year typically, growing very strongly, 15% growth compared to the 11% growth overall. So we are creating a disproportionate amount of low-wage jobs that pay $20-some thousand a year. We're very good at that. But lesser known, we're actually doing very well at creating high-wage jobs. We've had 11% growth in these industries. Healthcare, wholesale trade, financial activities, professional, scientific, and technical, which averages $76,000 a year, is our fastest growing industry. Information, $79,000 a year. High tech, a lot of high tech in information at $79,000, and high tech manufacturing again. So if you cluster all of these high wage industries, we actually see very strong growth at 11%. Not as strong as the low wage growth, but quite strong. Here's the problem. If you take these 3 major industries, construction, government, and non-high-tech manufacturing, we really haven't seen any growth over the last 10 years in those 3, and combined, only 2% job growth. So we're seeing a lot of high-wage growth. Unfortunately, we're seeing even more low-wage growth. But the classic middle-class occupations and industries, they simply aren't growing. And this is affecting all of our economy and all of our economic analysis when we look at housing or transportation, because the average is being distorted by a lot of growth on the high end, a lot of growth on the low end, and little to no growth in the middle. So you see it in a range of places. If you look at the actual demographic data of households, Portland is growing strongly again. It's historically been a lot of population growth, the 80s, 90s, and we're seeing it again now. And so if you take a look at every household in the Portland metro area by income level, these are households earning less than $10,000 a year. These are households earning more than $200,000 a year. And you just rank them, 10 to 15,000 a year, 15 to 25,000 a year, 25 to 35, 35 to 50, 50 to 75,000 a year, 75 to 100, 100 to 150, 150 to 200, and $200,000 plus. And what we see is growth in high-income households, growth in low-income households. And here you can literally see the middle class shrinking. We lost 8,000 households in the last 5 years in the Portland metro area in the $50,000 to $75,000 income category. So the middle class is literally shrinking. And this is the median household income in the Portland area. But we're essentially taking the bell curve, pushing down on the top, and rising up on the edges. And so this sort of distorts that whole bell curve further out. The average stays the same, but you have a lot of high income growth. It's very visible. Driving around Portland, you see a lot of new wealthy household creation. You see people doing very well, and it's easy to get the impression that the economy overall is doing well. And that's not necessarily incorrect, but you also see a lot of low income household growth as well. And unfortunately for the statistics, the average balances out. So I get asked, what's the average wage for the average job being created in Portland? And the answer, surprisingly, is right in the middle of these two extremes. So it makes it difficult to really analyze the nature of the jobs we lost versus the nature of the jobs we're adding now if you just look at the average wage. So this shows up all over the place, and it distorts in interesting ways. We also see it geographically. So here's the city of Portland in black, and here's per capita income among the residents of the city. And today, coming out of the recession, you see excellent income growth for the city of Portland. So in 2013, $33,000 a year was the average income in the city of Portland. If you take the entire income for the entire city and you divide it by the population, you get $33,000 a year for the city of Portland. That's back to pre-recession levels for folks in the city of Portland. But in other geographies, you see a totally different pattern. Here's Vancouver, the second largest city in the Portland region, and here's the city of Gresham, the third largest city in the Portland region. And you see the city of Vancouver lost income in the recession, but is continuing to actually decline. Same as the city of Gresham. The city of Gresham, before the recession in 2007, this income gap was about 30%. Today, the income gap between the average person in Portland and Gresham is 50%, 50%. That's huge. And widening. City of Vancouver, before the recession, this was a 7% income gap. The average person in the city of Vancouver really was almost as well off as the average person who lives in the city of Portland. But today you see an income gap of 30%. So this geography, certain communities are getting more folks on the higher end, and certain communities are getting more of that low income household formation. So again, this plays out in different ways all over the place. I have family that lives in Vancouver, and my father-in-law was running in downtown Vancouver, and this is a bathroom in Marine Park in the city of Vancouver. Here's the Columbia River right behind these trees, and he was running through the park, and he wanted to use the restroom, so he ran up to the restroom, and here above these water fountains was this yellow metal sign, and it was bolted to the wall, and I've zoomed in here for you so you can see in the upper left, restrooms closed due to budget cuts. I showed him that previous slide, and he was surprised. He lives in Vancouver, he works in Vancouver, and he sees it as an affluent community. But I did some research, and the city of Vancouver, because of its tax base shrinking, looking at that income data from the previous slide, what's happening is their tax base is in fact shrinking. They have less and less money for civic services. They've protected fire, police, and roads, but they've had to cut the budget because they have less of a tax base to collect revenue off of. Because of that, they have slashed Parks and Rec funding quite a bit in the city, so it's visible. And again, if you live in Vancouver, it's easy to wonder if this has been a very strong economic recovery, because in Vancouver, it's really challenged. But in the city of Portland, you have a very different story. This is a park that opened in May of 2015 of this year in the Cully neighborhood. The city of Portland was doing very well financially. And so while the city of Vancouver is cutting the Parks and Rec budget, the city of Portland is actually growing its Parks and Rec budget. As its tax base is growing, they have extra money to spend on a new park that was opened just this spring in the Cully neighborhood. And you see headlines like this. This is from the May 1st edition of the Oregonian, and the article by my friend Andrew Thien at the Oregonian, Portland expects a $49 million revenue jump. The city of Portland has, for the fiscal year, a $49 million budget surplus. So while the city of Vancouver is forced to close down parks because they don't have the tax base, the city of Portland actually has extra money. They didn't have to raise taxes to get this extra money. It just came about because of this growing population, this gentrification as people move to the city of Portland with money in these higher income industries and occupations, and they're driving this increase in revenue, and the city of Portland, without raising taxes, is able to have an extra $49 million and is planning on developing more new parks in the city of Portland with this new extra money. So it would be easy to say, if you live in Portland and you read this newspaper, you would think, wow, this economy is great. We've fully recovered from the recession. Governments have extra money. Happy days are here again. But if you live in Vancouver and you went to tried to use the bathroom in a park, you would have the opposite impression. And this is what makes analyzing this economic recovery so frustrating, is the vast discrepancies around the region. Part of what's going on is the demographics, as I said. And if you look at the population growth, that shows up there. So we just got in May the newest 2014 census population numbers. And here's the city of Portland in black, Washington County in red, Clark County in green. Those are our friends in Southwest Washington in the Vancouver and Camas area. And here's Clackamas County in purple. And if you look at the population growth in the 1990s, when Oregon was one of the fastest growing states and the Portland area was growing incredibly quickly, you see that in fact the city of Portland wasn't getting much of that growth. It was only growing by about 4,000 people a year. Whereas Washington County was growing by 3 times that pace, almost 14,000 new residents to Washington County in our western suburban county there. Here's Clark County in southwest Washington, growing more than twice as fast as the city of Portland. And here's Clackamas County, also growing faster than the city of Portland. Here's the 2000s, and here's the first 4 years of this decade. So looking at population growth since 2010, the city of Portland is now growing more people per year than any of the suburban counties. And this is something we've never seen before. We've never seen the city of Portland growing faster than the suburban counties, but here it is. And so while the city of Portland grows almost twice as fast as it did in the 90s, Washington County is growing noticeably slower than it did in the 90s. Here's Clark County growing at about half the rate that it did in the 1990s. And a lot of these communities, they were based around this idea of just grow, 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 and they were able to pay for their government services through population growth. Without raising taxes, their tax base would just grow due to natural demographic population increase. And they're seeing economic challenges like with the parks in Vancouver, whereas the city of Portland is suddenly finding extra money in the bank account because they're just getting this population growth of people coming with jobs, having money, buying real estate, increasing the tax base, and the city of Portland is doing quite a bit better. But this is a reversal from what we know about the Portland metro economy back in the 90s when the city of Portland was the slowest growing part of the region. So the city of Portland is not unique here, but it is unusual. So when the population data came out in May, I went through and I picked on the 50 largest cities in America. The city of Portland is the 28th largest city in the United States, but it is growing quite a bit faster than most communities. Under current trends, by the year 2020, the city of Portland will be the 25th largest city by the year 2020, if the population trends continue. And so here's Portland. It's grown about 6% since 2010. And if you compare it to the rest of the state, that's almost twice as fast as the rest of the state of Oregon. And again, this is something we haven't seen since maybe the 1940s. The city of Portland growing noticeably faster than the surrounding area or the state. But there it is. If we look at the 50 largest cities in America, about 17, about 1/3 of them, are growing faster, noticeably faster, than the rest of the state. And I've charted out some of the significant ones here. The city of Austin is maybe the fastest growing city in America over the last few years, 12% growth. That's faster than Texas, which is obviously a fast growing state in Texas. But Austin stands out, growing significantly faster than the rest of the state of Texas. Here's Denver, one of the 4 or 5 fastest growing cities in America, along with Seattle. Denver growing at 10%, Seattle growing at 10%, Colorado growing at 6%, Washington State growing at 4%. So there are cities around the country, Atlanta, San There's speculation there's a generational issue here and that millennials prefer living in cities, and we'll see how long that lasts. But again, this is only happening in 17 out of the 50 largest cities in America. So it's not just happening in Portland, it's happening in other cities around America, but it's not happening in most of them. And in some of them, you have a very unusual situation. Here's the city of Chicago, very slow growth. Only 1% population growth in 4 years is quite slow. But if it weren't for the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois would not be growing at all. The rest of the state of Illinois at 0% population growth. So that's something you see as well, where these cities are the only source of population growth, particularly in some of the Midwest states. So who are these people? We're looking at about 50,000 people moving to the city of Portland over the last 5 years. That's a lot of population growth. And if we look at the demographics, they tend to disproportionately be younger folks, 20s and 30s. And they disproportionately tend to have college degrees. So they tend to be better educated and younger than the rest of the US population. And here we have the education level in the 5 largest cities in the Portland area. Here's the city of Portland, Beaverton, Hillsborough, Vancouver, and Gresham. And you just see here in 2000, only about 1/3 of the population, about 33% of the people in the city of Portland, of the adults, had a bachelor's degree. Well, that number's just shot up. We're at 46% now in 2013. Among adults between the ages of 25 and 45, that number is actually 51%. So a slight majority of adults under the age of 45 who live in the city of Portland have a bachelor's degree. That's quite high. The city of Portland is the 8th best educated city of the 50 largest cities in America. We do quite well there. And we've really moved up that list in the last few years with this large number of college educated folks moving to the city. So that's a big increase. We've shot past the city of Beaverton, which really isn't seeing that demographic change. We've shot past the city of Hillsborough, which is in the heart of the Silicon Forest near Intel. We've certainly shot way past the city of Vancouver, 26% of its adults with college degrees. And this is where it gets concerning. Here's the city of Gresham. In 2000, 19% of adults had a bachelor's degree who lived in the city of Gresham. Today, it is also 19%. So while the city of Portland enjoys this, some of the larger communities, suburban communities just outside the city of Portland, and Gresham is quite notable here, they're not seeing any of this demographic increase at all, just a few miles from the city of Portland. So again, you have this incredible contrast in economic recovery around the region. And that plays out in the housing market, among other places. And here you see, these are residential permits. So the first thing a developer needs to do before they start a new apartment building or a single family house is they need to file a government permit with the city or the county, plumbing, electrical, structural. Well, economists track that closely. And here we have that data for the Portland metro region going back to 2000. And what do you see? Lots and lots of single family homes being built, not too many multifamily homes being built here in gray. So single family in black, multifamily in gray, and typically a lot more single family homes being built than apartment buildings and condos in gray. And then the recession hits. Here's the bubble. Here's 2005, 12,000 single family homes built in the Portland region in a single year. And then just a huge decrease when the bubble pops. Here's the bottom of the recession, 2009, 2010, very little to no new construction. And here's 2013, and here's 2014. In our lifetime, we've never seen this before. More multifamily housing is being built than single family housing. And looking at 2014 compared to 2013, the momentum in the single family home market has stalled out at about 5,000, well, I'll say 6,000 units a year. That's a little more than half what we saw historically in the early 2000s. So we're building very little single family housing. And this goes back to one of the first slides I showed. Construction jobs just aren't coming back. We're seeing growth in construction, but this is relatively little construction compared to what we've had before the recession. And we don't see the large demand for construction jobs that we had 10 or 15 years ago. Even as we build apartment buildings and condos in record numbers, we're building single family homes in such low numbers, it's really hurting the entire construction industry. So this is my neighborhood. I live near Mississippi Street. This is actually on Williams Street. This is Williams and Skidmore in North Portland. And if you live in Portland or you work in Portland, you spend any time in the city, you see things like this all the time. So I took this photograph, I think back in February, and I was walking down the street, and I was walking out of a brunch, and I was thinking about these numbers. And so I pulled out my phone and I took this photograph. These are 3 apartment buildings being built simultaneously on one corner in the city of Portland, here in North Portland. Here's Mason Williams, 76 units there, the Wilmore, 75 units, and the Peloton, 265 units. So on one corner in the city of Portland, over 400 housing units currently under construction. It's not that unusual. You certainly see it in Southeast Portland. You certainly see it in the Pearl District or the waterfront. But I wanted to sort of illustrate one of these locations, especially if you don't live or work in the city of Portland, you might not sort of appreciate it. But this is my commute, and you can see my commute's been pretty challenged lately with all this construction shutting down sidewalks on both sides of the street. It's hard to be able to walk or drive down these streets. We have all this construction going on. This is a new normal for the city of Portland. And if we look at the next slide, if we look at construction in every community in the Portland area with more than 20,000 people, here's the city of Portland. In 2014, 5,000 new housing units were permitted by the city. That's a tremendous number. Hillsborough and Vancouver are doing pretty well at about 800, 900 units each. But a lot of communities here are doing almost no construction at all. I've color-coded multifamily in gray here and single family in black, but you have that one corner I showed in that photograph was over 400 units out of the 5,000 permitted by the city last year. So, that was just a fraction of this 5,000. But if you take these 7 communities, Milwaukee, Tualatin, West Lynn, Gresham, Tigard, Oregon City, Lake Oswego, these are 7 towns. Lake Oswego at 45,000 people is the largest town in Clackamas County. Here's Milwaukee, 20,000 people. Tigard and Tualatin, Gresham is over 100,000 people, and it's not a small town in our community. If you take these 7 cities combined, you get 400 housing units. So the amount of construction in all of 2014 in these 7 cities combined equals 1 street corner in North Portland. That's very strange. It's a very lopsided housing growth that we're seeing. And this goes back to looking at, the city of Portland is almost holding up the entire housing growth in the economic recovery. And these 7 are growing at levels that suggest they're still in a recession. So again, very unbalanced demographics, very unbalanced economic recovery around the region. And I talk to people about construction, and I'll say, hey, construction jobs are flat from where they were 10 years ago. And I'll say, what are you talking about? Well, in the city of Portland, there's all this construction. But if you go out to these communities, you see almost no housing construction at all. And again, this is just very unbalanced around the region. Here's the city of Portland with its 5,000 units in 2014. That's twice the permits that Clark County did in 2014, here in red. Compare that to the historical average. If you look at the mid-90s, the late 90s, the early 2000s, from 1996 to 2005, historically, every county, almost every county, Clark County and Washington County had way more housing construction. Here you see Washington County had almost twice as much housing construction than the city of Portland historically, the late 90s, the early 2000s. So look at just Washington County in purple. They're way down. They're down by about 1/3 for 2014 from where they were historically. Here's Clackamas County, way down from where they were historically. So as Washington, Clackamas, and Clark continue to build housing, these suburban Portland area counties, at a much lower rate than they historically have, the city of Portland is growing housing at a rate that is twice what it's historically grown. It's incredibly lopsided. Also concerning, you see Clackamas County in green, boom, 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 and then no momentum since 2012 in the housing market in Clackamas County at all. This is very unusual. Clark County actually seems to have peaked out in 2013, is down a bit in 2014. We'll see where that goes. Washington County, almost no momentum between 2013 and 2014. So they've come up somewhat, but they've come up to a level that's much lower than they were historically, and they're not showing any momentum, even as the city of Portland breaks new population growth records. Very unbalanced. And that is the end of my presentation. If you have questions, feel free to contact me, is a thing I usually say here.
Our entire office specializes in multifamily real estate, making HFO the largest multifamily brokerage in the Pacific Northwest. Your success is our passion. Build your legacy with HFO. Call 503-241-5541 or visit our website at hfore.com for more information.